Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be playing Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake on the Steam Deck, thanks to KOEI TECMO GAMES for providing a code of the game. So, I played a few Fatal Frame games before, but never this one, especially not the original. That's not what I played back then. When it comes to the game info, it's an unknown status, so Valve is still learning about this game. The game actually releases in a couple days from now, so I got early access. I also tried the demo very quickly, and the demo is one chapter, so chapter 1. I went a little bit further from chapter 2, something like that, to see if there was any difference. When it comes to game size, it's 34.88 gigabytes when it's installed. Proton, I haven't touched anything, I keep it as default, which is Proton 10.2-4. Alright, so welcome to the options menu. First of all, HDR is enabled when you're using the OLED Steam Deck. I had no problems with that. Unfortunately, this is a Katana engine game, the same engine as Neo 3 and Rise of the Ronin, so you kind of know what to expect when it comes to performance. Borderless or windowed, you cannot do 16:10, so black bars at the top and bottom of the screen. FSR2 is chosen by default, and there's no other option. Not sure if the actual game on PC has DLSS. Resolution scale by itself was at 80%, but I recommend 60%. This is kind of like a little bit below quality upscaling, between quality and balanced. If you want a tiny bit of extra performance, 55% is not a bad idea. But the fact that we have FSR2 and is forced, it bothers me. It doesn't look great. When it comes to the FPS, unfortunately the game is locked to 30 or 60. I'm going to put it at 60 now, but remember that if this game is set to 60 and doesn't hit that target, it's going to go in slow motion, very distracting, so either 30 or 60. On the Steam Deck I highly recommend you put it at 30, otherwise slow motion everywhere. VSync off. Settings type is the presets, this is on custom. Shadow quality, either standard or low. On low, there are very pixelated shadows, especially from big light sources. Shadow render distance on close, just for performance reasons. Ambient occlusion on. Texture quality on standard. Screen space reflections, I turned them off, but I haven't seen a lot of them throughout the beginning of the game, so we'll see. Subsurface scattering, yes. LOD on standard. If you go for low or lowest, there's a ton of pop in, even on bigger objects very close to the character, so standard in my opinion is the way to go. Volumetric fog and volumetric clouds, I put it on low. I turned off motion blur on both the camera obscura and in general, just personal preference. The camera obscura is when you're aiming in first person, if you're going to, when you're aiming for the enemies and all that. Film grain off, thank god they put that option. Film grain is very heavy in this game. Depth of field on, personal preference. Lens flare on, and that's basically it. Those are the settings. There's a few settings here and there, but unfortunately, they forcing FSR2 bothers me a lot. There's also a sharpness slider that I recommend keeping on 1, but 60% resolution seems to be the best in between. Thanks to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Instant Gaming is a website to get cheaper games for PC, PlayStation, Xbox and Nintendo Switch. You can find Resident Evil Requiem for $58.84 US, Crimson Desert Deluxe Edition for $67.44, or the game we're playing today, Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake for $38.72 US. And like every month, there's a giveaway that will give you one game of your choice for one of you guys on Instant Gaming. Hit where it says participate, follow myself and Instant Gaming in social media for more chances. And thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. Alright, so welcome to Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake. So here I am, walking in the darkness. And well, what to say? Image quality is pretty poor. We're using 60% resolution, but with FSR2, so when the flashlight flickers, you're going to notice that the upscaler is having a lot of trouble maintaining detail. I mean, that's pretty common with upscalers, but in a very dark game like this, when light flickers, that's when it gets the worst. And as you can see, it's going in kind of in slow motion. That's because we're not hitting consistent 60 FPS. So if you choose 60s in the menu and you do not hit 60s, you're going to get the slow motion effect. So the first thing that I recommend, the pause menu for some reason is the X key. So hit X, go to options, go to screen settings, and down here put the game at 30 FPS. And I changed my mind when it comes to shadows, put those on low, otherwise it's going to run horribly bad. And open the Steam Deck menu here and lock it to 30 FPS. That helped me have slightly better frame times, as weird as it sounds. So yeah, when we have the two characters on screen running with a flashlight on and all that, traversing, you get kinda 30 FPS with spikes in the frame time. Although despite the frame time looking like that at the left, very spiky, it doesn't feel like that when playing the game 100% of the time. So it doesn't feel like stuttery 30 FPS. Probably because this is a slower paced game in comparison, but yeah. I mean, the flashlight casts shadows, and there is darkness. And you can read the text is pretty big, so that's good enough for the smaller screen. I'm showing you a bit past the demo area. This is chapter 2 basically. And it's a little bit more open because we're not locked down to a small apartment. There is traversal stutter here and there. It seems to be spiking the CPU, one core, to 100% when loading something else, which I remember happening in Neo 3 actually, but in bigger areas. This is slower paced. I think that's why it's more stable when it comes to GPU performance at least. But again, it's forcing one core to 100% very quickly when moving the camera. Curious House, yeah, I'm not making that up. It's called Curious House. But I gotta give it to them, the atmosphere in this game is fantastic. The engine choice bothers me, the FSR2 bothers me, but when it comes to atmosphere, GG. I'll give that to them. But performance is terrible. I mean, the game doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look good enough to justify this performance like most Katana engine games, if you know what I mean. I mean, if you played Neo 3 or Rise of the Ronin, you know what I'm talking about. So this is no different. I think it's hidden a little bit better just due to the fact that this is a very dark game. So many of the imperfections are hidden in comparison to having something on daytime, which again makes a lot of sense. Using the camera, it's been okay. In previous games, when I brought up the camera with the effects on screen, the forced motion blur and all that, I got performance drops. But here, even with the flashlight on, it seems to be fine. Yeah, I mean, just look at that frame time when just traversing around. And again, it's because the CPU gets maxed out, that drops our... that limits the power of the GPU because the CPU needs to load stuff when it goes to 100%. And that just slows it to a crawl like that. We can force a manual GPU clock to maybe 1300. But that's probably going to slow it down because the CPU doesn't have enough juice to load things up. Okay, I think it's actually better with the 1300 MHz on the GPU because we don't let the CPU get that much juice and take it away from the GPU. So we don't get that hard lock to 15 FPS. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. Now that I'm looking at it more closely. Just to limit as much as possible the drops in performance when traversing. Yeah, the frame time gets inconsistent as usual, but it's not due to the CPU not knowing what to do with the GPU frequency. Go, some combat. Ooh, that was a big hit. Okay, here's when the GPU suffers. So maybe we need a little bit higher on the GPU clock. And I cannot pause the game, I keep forgetting. Come on. There we go, just in time. So if you ever played if you ever played Crimson, if you ever played Fatal Frame, well, you know what to expect. But again, performance doesn't convince me. I think for this combat sections and stuff, you probably need a little bit better when it comes to the GPU clock. 1300 doesn't seem to be enough. Maybe 1500 or 1400. Oh, he just dodged me. Oops. So yeah, after that fight, I would say 14 or 1500 megahertz on the GPU. Maybe 1500 makes more sense. We're limiting the CPU quite a bit. But I think the CPU doesn't know what to do with this game, honestly. Especially when it comes to traversal. But this part, I was expecting it to run worse because there's heavier foliage. That usually drops performance in most games quite a bit. But we seem to be fine here. Yeah, maybe 1400. But 1300 definitely not enough. You can also turn off depth of field if you want a little bit more help. Alright, now in handheld very quickly. Apologies about my reflection on the screen. Super dark games like this one, when recorded in real life daytime, it's very hard to capture like this without my reflection showing up. So yeah, this is to have an idea on what it looks like on the smaller screen. The good thing about the smaller screen is that it hides the low resolution better. That in combination with the game being very dark, I think it's less obvious about the aliasing despite being at 60% upscaling with FSR 2, which freaking sucks, so we don't have any other option other than that one. And again, it's not perfect. On the smaller screen, what I'm trying to say is that it is less obvious. But I think it looks okay. It's not super distracting. I don't think it looks that bad. You can see the upscaling artifacts. But again, the darkness of the game really does hide it, in my opinion. It's just when the light flickers, the flashlight flickers, is way more obvious. So at that point it's not being hidden well. That's kind of what it looks like on handheld. Well, considering it's a Katana engine game, it runs better than I expected. It still runs bad, don't get me wrong. But for Katana engine standards, which again is not a big bar to surpass, it's decent enough. Unfortunately, you're forced to play at either 30 or 60. If you don't get 60s, the game slows down. That's why I locked it to 30. I still recommend the settings that I said at the beginning, something like this. And when it comes to the GPU clock, because the CPU loves loading stuff with a couple cores, keep it at either 1400 or 1500 megahertz to keep the GPU working at almost its maximum potential. And the CPU, well, while it won't be used at its maximum potential, it's enough to load the assets correctly, which is kind of the thing that I think was the issue with this, because if you don't do this, the game can hard lock to 15 FPS, because the GPU loses a lot of frequency when the CPU is loading something new. This forces the GPU to stay up there to render the game. When attacking ghosts, it's all good. It can drop here and there, but that's just because of the depth of field. You can also turn that off. Personally, I think it adds to the nightmarish look. And when it comes to resolution, we're at 60%, which is lower than quality FSR. And honestly, quality FSR 2 doesn't look great in general, especially anything below that, especially on Steam Deck. But with the game being very dark, it disguises the low resolution quite well, except when there is a flickering of lights. You can see that the upscaler kind of dies when lights are flickering. On the smaller screen, again, less obvious in combination with having the darker look to it. I'd say the most positive thing about this game, without a doubt, is the atmosphere. It really is a freaking creepy looking game. Again, not the best visually looking game. I think it looks decent enough, but the performance doesn't make any sense at all, at least in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, it works on Steam Deck, it's playable. I played it portable as well, and it looked okay, especially with HDR. But we're looking at a Katana engine game at 30 FPS with spikes in the frame time when traversing. Consider it playable on Steam Deck, although it shouldn't be running similar to a UE5 game, not even close. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did taking a look a couple days before release of places outside of the demo, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys, thanks for watching.